Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Existential Files. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Louie.
Oh, you sound very excited there, Matthew.
Well, I like it. I like it when you sort of just tell me, just say this, and so, hello, Louie.
Hey, hello
Woo!
there.
How are
Right,
you?
so I'm pretty much the same as always. Thank you. So today we are joined by a very special guest. Our listeners will be pleased to hear that it isn't a psychologist. So that's a turn up for the books. Perhaps a lay psychologist, but we're joined by Elisha Shapiro, who former presidential candidate for in the US, former organizer of the Nihilist Olympics, and a general nihilist. Although, again, I think we're going to start off this once we introduce you, Elisha. We're going to say. Pronunciation. I mean, Elisha, nihilism. I mean, what the? I've been googling it. The Oxford English Dictionary says nihilism. So, why nihilism?
I say nihilist because it sounds friendlier. Nihilist sounds like annihilate. I think both are acceptable, but you're right. I think nihilist is more common.
It's nothing to do with the fact then that Elisha, that you're known as Elisha as opposed to Elisha, so therefore you think, right, everything else needs to be changed the same way of pronunciation. But we're going to find then through the podcast we'll probably split between nihilism and nihilism, but we're talking about the same thing.
That's fine. And you can say Elisha for all I care.
But no, we're going to be Elisha. And then, so Louis, I just said you're going to lead on this one, but I want to just start with a very basic question for the naive in the corner. We have spoken, obviously, about nihilism, nihilism, in earlier podcasts. You have described yourself as an existential nihilist, I believe. We're clear we're on the same page. Elisha, how might you define nihilism? Never mind how you might pronounce it, but how might you define it?
Well, I mean, it's basically not believing in anything, not accepting socially accepted value systems, not believing in God. It's essentially kind of rejecting socially accepted norms of belief.
Okay, and I'm happy with that last bit. So rejecting socially accepted norms of belief, as opposed to not believing anything, because couldn't one argue that one believes that those things are meaningless, pointless, not to be taken too seriously, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, some people say, well, you know, people always like get in different weird semantic arguments with me, like, well, you believe in nihilism, don't you? Like that's a meaningful argument. So yeah, I'm not too strict about that. The idea of, I mean, it is a little bit of rebellion, a little bit of artistic expression, a little bit of satire, just to make a deal of it. I mean, I don't have to make any. I could just be not believing in anything and just not make it like central to my identity. But it's funny.
Because I mean, if I jump in here, Elisha, I mean, I was watching a documentary about you yesterday, and I'm very much reminded of Andy Kaufman, Lenny Bruce. There's definitely a kind of, I mean, obviously you're Jewish, and there's this two fingers up to the world, you know, a wind-up merchant was the phrase that came into my mind. I mean, is that definitely? Do you think is there an affinity with a kind of Andy Kaufman, you know, wind up everybody until they explode?
I do. I mean, the high compliment to compare me to Andy Kaufman and Lenny Bruce. They are wonderful social commentators and entertaining people. So yes, I'm admirers of both of them, but there's a lot of people I admire. I'm not sure I see myself as fitting into the. I don't know. I'm not sure. Well,
I suppose one of the key phrases there that is wind-up merchant. This idea that one of your key, let's say, motives might be just to, let's say, poke fun at, or the very least, or as Louis said, stick two fingers up at the way people think about stuff, people's assumptions about things, that kind of thing?
I mean, I am an artist, so so this whole part of my identity as being the nihilist is playing with what people believe in and making fun of what people believe in and pointing out to whoever is in the audience, meaning in the media that covers me, that there is an option. People don't believe there is an option to not believe in these things. And and part of it is finding humor in it. But the goal is to just point out some realities that people just don't see.
Absolutely. And that's what appeals to me, is this idea that there are beliefs. People often go to this idea of believing something or having a view of something without recognizing that is a belief, that is a perspective, a choice, or whatever it might be, or something that's very much influenced by one's culture, background, all those kind of things. Just pointing out it's a belief that could be disputed, challenged, looked at a different way, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the people don't see that. And, I kind of made some notes. I don't know if I'm allowed to refer to these. But the idea is, I think there's something, and listening to your podcast and I've only listened to a few of them, but that brings up this idea of why are we not believing in anything, and why does everybody else do it? And I think there is something in human nature that kind of dictates this. And we're freaks, or I am at least. I don't know about you guys.
Well, definitely freaks. But I mean, I tend to not be quite so quick to I wouldn't label myself as nihilist. And I think Louie would probably just call me a fence sitter. That I'm one saying I'm questioning and pondering, and therefore interested in the idea of nihilism. And this is something obviously Louie very much is, well, again, Louie, would you say you identify with? I think you probably would say that, perhaps, or am I putting words in your mouth?
I mean, I think it's interesting having Elisha on the show, because obviously I come at it from a scientific perspective. So for me, my nihilism is about the universe is not about meaning. To think that the universe goes out there to produce meaningful creatures is just, retarded. Essentially, the universe doesn't give a shit about intelligent beings or not. So, for me, it's a kind of top-down process. There is no objective meaning in the universe, and that's where my nihilism comes from. However, I must admit, again, Elisha and I my partner was watching the documentary and saying, that's the kind of joke you would do, Louie, or that's the kind of thing you would have done, Louie. And I think, again, I'm a bit of a wind-up merchant. I kind of like to say offensive things or just, make people shocked. Because if you shock people, or if you show people that you can stand outside of the social norms and that nothing bad is going to happen, you can say, fuck Jesus, and you're not going to be struck down by lightning. I think suddenly it can make people think, well, maybe there is more to life than this, closeted, limited experience that they get taught, maybe in school or by, the religious leaders or whatever.
Well, yeah. And now I do enjoy like pointing out these things and whatever my audience is. But listening to you guys, I think about Freud, and I think about Sartre and Camus, and I'm thinking there is something about the tribe where if you don't subscribe to the beliefs that the rest of the tribe believes in, you're kicked out, right? And so somehow, because we live, I don't know why we get away with it, but that's a civilization and discontent, right? You're supposed to repress those individualist feelings and fit into the tribe so that you are trusted and accepted as one of the group. And it's fun not to do that, isn't it?
Absolutely, but it sounds like you've gone several steps further than that, though, in terms of putting yourself forward as a candidate in various places. So, again, the motive behind that was it primarily as a wind up, as a comedic stunt? What's the main motivation for going to that kind of effort?
I mean, it is performance art, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was hanging around. I assumed I was going to be a writer and write novels and stories. And I was hanging around in the 70s, these like weird LA performance artists. And then along comes the Olympics. And we're all sitting around and kind of making jokes about the Olympics. And my job at the time was to be a publicity writer for a small town. And so I had a press list and I knew how to write a press release. And it's kind of like, I thought, and I love media. And I thought I could make like the media my canvas. And I could communicate to people through media stories. And so I just wrote a press release about the Nihilist Olympics coming to LA in 1984. And then I had a list of the wacky events we were going to have. And it became like my art form. It was a way for me to express myself, a way for me to play with other people's expectations and satirize things I thought were silly. And that's fun.
Because, I mean, if I could just tell you, I mean, people do make a big deal of the Olympics, don't they? I mean, it's a huge business. People flag waving and yeah. I mean, I fucking hate the Olympics. I hate fucking sport. I hate the fact that you get a prize for running the fastest. I mean, who that gives a shit who runs the fucking fastest? This is, one up from school sports days. And I nearly killed a boy with a javelin once, and that's about as much as I want to play sports.
How many points did you get for that?
Well, exactly. You put a sharp object in my hand and say, "Don't throw it." I mean, I'm sorry. I became millions of years of evolution took control, and I just couldn't help myself. But I mean, was part of it that you see the Olympics and everybody who's fawning over it and stuff, and you just think, let's satirize that, let's do the ironing, or let's do the competitive ironing. I think was one of your competitive
ironing. That's a different use of the word. It was satire, and it was play. Art to me is a kind of play, and so everyone was doing the Olympics, and I thought, well, what's something fun I can do and my friends can do, and that would kind of make us laugh and not have to suffer through these Olympics with everybody else. And putting on our own Olympics was really fun. U-turn competition, the decathlon of housework, the projectile vomiting marathon. Man, we had a lot of fun. And it was covered like crazy in the press. The international press comes to LA, and they're bored of the Olympics too, and they want something fun to write about.
And at the time, did they kind of get it? Did they get what your point you were making, or did they just go, "Oh, this is another event we can cover, great"? It just adds another depth to their coverage of the Olympics, or did they kind of get it at the time?
I think the people in the media got it because it was kind of aimed at them, and I mean, just because media is so much part of my brain, and I'm so interested in how the media works and how it makes people believe things, that I'm playing with that. So that it's kind of, it's about the Olympics, but it's also about the media, and it's also about what we choose to believe unthinkingly, and so it's fun to play with that. And so the idea, So I think that the reporters who talked to me individually, most of them I felt like were laughing with me.
And you must then find nowadays, I mean, bringing it forward to the current situation, you're having a field day? I mean, where do you start?
I thought about doing something related to the last election, and then all these other people were jumping in and trying to do funny things, even though they kind of failed. So I lost kind of interest, just because there were a lot of kind of artsy comedians or actors or something who were trying to do some shtick about it and run for president or something. So anyway, I did lose interest in this particular one. I am thinking of things do occur to me thinking, oh, I should make a video about this or that related to the current situation. And I'm making notes. I may.
And I'm even just thinking, even contemporary media in general. I mean, given that talking about back in the 80s, where what would be now described as traditional media approaches. I mean, in the last 10 years, it's obviously taken to a point where these kinds of questions are very much front and center for many people in terms of the media and the role the media would play in terms of forming beliefs, communicating ideas, and so on.
Yeah. So yes, I was ahead of my time, are you saying?
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you were very much ahead of your time, but I'm wondering now with how almost things have caught up.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I am doing different things now than these large scale events. Though if something, I mean, it's kind of like the circumstance dictated it. I mean, I was sitting around and there was like Arnold Schwarzenegger running for governor. And I thought, oh, that's going to be fun to run against Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so it just became, that was my governor campaign. And what else? So yeah, when I ran for president, I don't know, it was Dukakis versus one of the elder Bush in 1988, I think. And then that was a funny election, just goofy. So it's kind of like the circumstances kind of inspired me a little bit.
Did you get any votes? What kind of votes did you get?
Yeah, I actually, by the time I did the governor campaign in, I can't remember, when was that, like 92 or something, 96 maybe. I actually tried to figure out how many votes I got. And I was an official write-in candidate. So I was able to figure out, I got 240 votes, which was like more than all the other write-in candidates put together. I tried to figure out how many votes I got for president, but it was impossible because I wasn't an official candidate. So you have to do all this paperwork. I did send letters to each of the 50 states asking them about how to be an official candidate, but it was too much for me. But I was just a media candidate.
And I'm reminded of, as you were speaking, I saw images of Richard Pryor in Brewster's Millions, where he's then the vote, but none of the above.
Yeah.
He gets all the votes and so on. It has that feel to it, as in just don't vote for these kind of things. And actually people might be attracted to vote for you.
And I mean, obviously in Britain, we've got the monster raving loony party, and it's got a little bit of, smacks a little bit of that, doesn't it?
Also known as the Tory party.
Yeah.
Our election system is set up a little more defensively than that to keep people like me from actually getting real votes. But it was still it was about a media existence, a media story more. And so I was just happy with getting coverage.
So do you think that, I mean, I often say on the podcast that I feel that the young people are getting more nihilistic, Elisha. I mean, what do you think? You run quite a popular nihilist website, Nihilist Corner?
Yeah. And yeah, I know I do get a lot. It seems over the years, I have gotten more people viewing it, and I've gotten more people like going to my little Facebook Nihilist Fun Facebook page. So yeah, I have noticed there's more. I mean, it used to be, when I started doing this, it was like no one would call themselves a nihilist. It was like calling yourself a child molester or something. So, I mean, it was like unacceptable title, but so yes, that it's not that way anymore. People, I think, are more interested in more of whatever that means.
And again, I mean, I think if we look at, in the past where people respected institutions and they respected, government and things like that, to question that or to run against those people was to disrespect it somewhat, wasn't it? And therefore, that's kind of what makes it funny. I think now there's a lot, I think the young people don't really, they say, why do we have to respect what you respect? And they look for justification for that, and we can't give it to them.
Yeah, so this was, I don't know, this story is relevant to that, but I mean, the first time it was like, I was right out of college. I was like working in a movie theater. There was like the ticket girl, a high school girl working for me. And she like one day says, you know, there was a thing on the news, and a senator called this other senator a nihilist, and what does that mean? So I explained, oh, that's just what they call each other if they don't agree with them. It means they don't believe in anything. And she says, do they really not believe in anything? And I said, no, they just don't agree with what the other person believes in. But then I of course realized that I was a nihilist. So I said that, and we both laughed. And that was the beginning of me using that as in the opposite way that everybody else was using that word as an insult.
Because it isn't necessarily an insult, is it, at the end of the day? I mean, I certainly don't feel it's an insult.
Yeah, well, now I guess people are questioning more. It used to be nothing but an insult. If a person was a nihilist, that just meant, and I mean, I've thought about why that is such a terrible thing to call somebody. And it's because, and I think it has something to do with people expect the individual to be subservient to some higher power. And if you're not, you must be an egomaniac. And that is, so that idea of being a nihilist is like, that's what you call somebody who is too big for their britches and isn't subservient to the authority. And maybe people's attitude are changing because it does not seem to mean that these days the way it used to.
Or maybe the young are all narcissists and therefore they are all megalomaniacs. I was watching your documentary yesterday, and at one point you call you refer to pussy atheists. I wondered, do you want to talk to us a little bit about pussy atheists?
Let's preface that because Louie may be having a vested question here because you are an atheist.
Well, so, and I think,
or is it? Okay, yeah. Let's let Elisha try to explain the term before we question.
Yeah.
It more.
Okay. So yeah, the idea being, and yeah, it's interesting the difference between what an atheist is and what a nihilist is. Just meaning atheists will say, okay, I don't have to believe in a God to have a righteous moral structure. And a nihilist will say, the moral structure is made up just like God's made up. And so did that make sense about the distinction?
So you're going one step further, and rather than just say, "Oh, don't just stop at God," then everything is made up, as it were, structured.
Yeah. And what I was kind of thinking about the difference between Camus and Sartre is kind of falls along the similar lines, right? I don't know, like Sartre. It's been many years since I've read these guys, but Sartre was like, you have to create your own meaning. And he, sure, there's no meaning handed down by God, but that's why that's our responsibility then to structure the meaning of our lives ourselves. And so that's what I think Sartre is saying in his books. And Camus, in my mind anyway, as I recall many years ago, is kind of just saying, there's nothing, just get used to it. That makes sense? I don't know. You might disagree with that, but that was my take on them when I was younger. The difference between those two guys.
Well, it goes to I can ask the naive questions because I've read them less than you two guys and Louie as well. So the way you summarise it there, is it the case then that at least Sartre was saying, okay, well, it's not being handed down, so create one. Whereas Camus was saying, don't even bother creating what just isn't. There's nothing there to bother worth creating. Is that another essence of what he was saying?
It's a little like that, but Sartre seemed to be kind of like, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but kind of like saying it's our responsibility to make meaning, even though God's not handing us meaning, but we have to make our lives meaningful. And so he was kind of like a little strict about that, I thought.
And I mean, if I jump in there, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily call myself a humanist, because for me, humanity is one big pile of shit. So just thinking that you're some great thing in the universe is again, it's kind of a patting yourself on the back for no real reason. I mean, yes, okay, and human beings are special in some ways. I mean, we can make rockets, and we can, you know, we telescopes and all these things, and large hadron colliders and stuff like that. So, you know, by some criteria we are special. But I do agree that, you know, there is in some atheists can be very smug, can't they? And ultimately, if you're going to reject God, you know, you have to understand that there's a lot that you can reject. And in fact, I mean, I don't know, Elisha, if I say to you that I even reject, say, the autobiographical self, I mean, the self is as much made up as God. I mean, just because you wake up every morning and you say to yourself, hey, I'm Elisha, you know, or hey, I'm Louie. I mean, again, that's a form, I always say it's a form of ancestor worship. Yes, so what, you were Louie yesterday? You're choosing to be Louie today, you know. And again, if I ask you the question, you know, are you a nihilist about your own self, Elisha, as I am, by the way?
I don't know. I don't think I you know, I kind of am just, it's not something that bothers me about whether my identity is somehow special. I just
or illusory.
Yeah,
While Elisha's pondering on that Louie. So, and this isn't, it's asked purely from my naive perspective, and I'm curious. So, when you say I'm choosing to be Louie, who's doing that choosing?
Well, I mean, we have discussed this before.
I know,
on the podcast quite a few times.
Yeah, and we come back to these things because they're interesting questions. So,
yeah,
yes, we do. We wake up and you say choose. Use the term choose the identity. Who's doing the choosing?
Well, there's a naked consciousness, but that naked consciousness doesn't have to orient itself according to the past experiences that it finds within its memories. It can choose to be a new identity if it wants to. And obviously, if you say to yourself, well, my memories tell me I'm Louie, and therefore I'm going to now do what Louie said he was going to do, that removes some of your existential freedom now in the present. And again, I think it's a form of ancestor worship. Just because your parents tell you to respect certain institutions doesn't mean that you have to. That's your choice. If you choose to respect those institutions, if you choose to continue the trajectory that your consciousness has been laying down inside your memory, then that's up to you. But ultimately, you have the choice. I mean, we could all just slit our wrists at any moment and reject not only a biological heritage, but also our identity as well. So there is a choice there. Of course, it's a meaningless universe. And what does having a choice in a meaningless universe mean? I mean, it's all a big joke on us. Sucks to be us.
And I get all that, and I get that in terms of we've heard versions of that over time over our conversations, both on the podcast and off. That's why I was just trying to get to the hub of this idea of, yes, you know, this definite sense of we live each daily life as though there is some continuous narrative. We've talked about identity, how that might arise from their various perspectives. And I was just, so it comes back to this idea of whatever this background, or you call naked consciousness is, that there is a sense there behind this level of almost facade that I think that at least Elisha in his various activities is, say, poking fun at, just you know, making us more aware of, realizing there's a whole kind of way in which we kind of engage with the world around us, particularly at this surface level through the media and through kind of everyday culture. And I was just trying to strip away to saying, well, if every morning we get up and we have this sense of, oh, waking up again today with the same sense of identity as yesterday, I recognize that there is choices that take place in that. I was just, when you said, well, I get to choose, or you get to choose that identity each day, it was going, well, what's making the choice? And it's this idea, there's some kind of background consciousness, which again, in terms of other podcasts, we have tried to unpack what we mean by that. I know we've kind of gone a little bit off our current topic, but it's useful because it reminds ourselves of there's a broad theme. You know, it's very hard to pick it through when you look through all the podcasts, but there is the bigger question is these kind of notion of existential questions. And whilst I do not describe myself as a nihilist, and in fact some of our conversations, say, with Louie over the years have been like, well, what do we mean by that? And an atheist and different types of terms. I'm say much more woolly in my thinking in that respect, but I'm genuinely pondering on what's it all about, how we choose to live our lives, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing, whether or not we actually engage in these bigger questions. And it's those kinds of discussions we keep finding ourselves returning to.
And if I could, if I could just quickly jump in, I was going to say, and part of it is, Elisha, for example, is I obviously want to be crowned the most nihilistic person ever in the history of the human race. So if Elisha is the funniest nihilist, I guess I'm the nihilist, and you know, it's obviously just a pissing match here. So you know.
So if I may jump in, so, you know, what you say, Louie, people do attach importance to the way they perceive their identities. It's true. But it kind of, when you're talking about it, was making me think about some of the people I've talked to who've come to me in distress, and that there is human nature involved too. That there was I mean, the way we evolved, part of that evolution makes us try to make order out of the disorder of the universe, even though that is not true. There is no order, but our brains create order because there was evolutionary benefit to doing that. And I think that's part of this discussion too, of how seriously do you take that framework in your brain that you perceive as the model of the universe around you. And that part of that is who you are. And so you create this model of, this is me, and I'm in this universe, and this is my model. And our brains just do that. I'm sorry, but it's okay. I think I tend to be open to just playing with that and not taking it too seriously. But that's just because I'm a freak. And anyway, I think that's just part of human nature. You know, part of, I think, seeing the world the way I do, I kind of have to accept human nature also. As I'm sorry, I like people, I like sex, I like laughing, I like playing, I like this or that. And it's not like any of those things are meaningful, but that is part of like the way I and all my other people evolved.
And I mean, just to clarify, I like orgasms. I love tits. You know, and I love a good laugh, to be honest. I mean, you know, we talked about Andy Kaufman and Lenny Bruce, and I mean, one of my favorite people in the whole world is Larry David, and you know, and I think if I could have me on a desert island, would be me and Larry David, not having any kind of homosexual sex, because I'm not like that, but definitely we, you know,
if you only had tits, I said. Oh, you can go.
Something happened there. I don't know. We lost Matthew because of the discussion of homosexuality there.
Well, I'm still here, but I heard you talking, and then it all went very quiet. So what happened there?
Well, these technical issues happen.
Anyway, so yes.
So weren't you in the middle of saying something, Louie? That's what I heard. I heard you in the middle of saying something.
Where did you hear me up to?
I heard you about Larry David on an island. You made a point of saying not having homosexual sex. Not that we were implying that. I'm not sure why you thought you need to.
I think I'd made my point, which was that I was just clarifying that you know, I'm not depressed. I think that the universe's meaninglessness and the fact that existence is absolutely absurd. I mean, absurd means, you know, we could have our legs where our arms are, our heads could be on our asses, you know. And the fact of the matter is that any sense, I mean, I'm a great fan of Douglas Adams, you know, any sense of normality that we may feel exists is purely illusory. I mean, there is no such thing as normality. There is no such thing as reality per se. And it's all absurd and one big joke. And I must admit, I'm of the opinion that we either laugh at that or we're the butt of the joke.
And I'm with you on that one. And that's why, again, we go back to my very, very early podcasts, is that given all that, if that's the backdrop, we're still faced with waking up each morning. You know, you point out saying, oh, we can choose today in terms of who we're going to be. But generally speaking, we follow the narrative that we've created around ourselves. And it's those questions of how we choose to live our lives are the ones that face all of us. And what we base those decisions upon are the things that really motivate us, because if nothing else, you know, we wake up each morning, we've got to do something with that day. Do we do something which tries to build something? And that's why I find the discussion around meaning quite an interesting one. So whilst we may say that there is nothing, or the universe is not inherently meaningful, and maybe Elisha has something to say about this, but the things that we still choose to do, it is part of what creates some sense of meaning, even if it's not necessarily meaningful. I mean, I'm very cautious of the words being used here, but by doing the things you've been doing throughout your life, Elisha, you've been creating something which is, in a broader sense, meaningful. It has given your life some sense of meaning, even if it's just to whatever consciousness inhabits your physicality and gives your days some sense of meaning.
Yeah, I have nothing against that, of feeling some sense of comfort or pleasure in doing one thing or another. And I don't, I'm okay with my brain the way it is. And I understand that whatever pleasure I'm getting something from whatever it is I do is coming from my brain, not coming from the universe or me being rewarded for doing something good. So I don't know, is that a distinction?
Well, no, I understand what you're saying there. And again, now this is the word pleasure, is that, but do you necessarily do the things, and do we all necessarily choose, is the main motivation what we do pleasure, and or is there some sense of, well, often you do something because it has a sense of meaning, you create a bit of a sense of purpose to it. There seems as though there's a point, even if it's illusory, even if it's just essentially passing time until the day comes in which you don't wake up that day and you don't have the experience of being alive. But people don't necessarily just purely choose the hedonic lifestyle where you go, well, I'll just do things that are purely pleasurable. Well, there is something which tinged with a sense of purpose, meaning, has some feeling of a point to it, even if it's purely illusory.
Well, I have no problem with that, but saying something's pleasurable is a little more complicated, because I have a job. I teach college students about English skills of different sorts, and that gives me pleasure helping the students. More so than selling cars. So what kind of distinction is that? I'd rather not be selling people stuff, and I'd rather be just helping people one-on-one. And and I don't do it because it's good. I do it because that's a more enjoyable way to make a living. And I'm
wondering, and some of that, and again, because my paid job is, again, working in higher education, so I include teaching as part of that, and that's something I enjoy as well. But I'm wondering if part of the enjoyment comes from it because there's a sense of, again, I'm going to use the words that come into my head, but something that has a sense of being worthwhile. Even if we still go, yeah, if you step back from it, it doesn't matter if you didn't exist, it doesn't matter what you really do, because nothing has any point to it at all. Yet within the sense of waking up each morning and doing something with your time, you're doing something which feels as though, whilst, yes, has some enjoyment, I think some of that enjoyment comes from doing things which you are doing, something which helps another person, maybe has a bit of purpose, meaningfulness to it. Again, even if it's purely something we see from our own perspective, there is something about that, rather than just doing, I'm going to pursue purely hedonic pleasures and not worry about consequences, not worry about if it helps other people or harms them or not. I'm purely going to just do the things which gives this individual organism as much pleasurable experience as possible. That tends not to be the ones, the kind of motive that motivates most of us. We feel as though we do something which has at least a sense of a point to it, even if it's just giving it a point. Is that some of what the Sartre stuff is saying? And that, well, give yourself a point because there ain't no bigger picture that's dictating it for you. Whereas was Camus saying, doesn't matter what you do really, because it's all amounts to nothing.
I mean, both of those are true, but I also, when I, decide to have whatever job I have, and that I decide that this one gives me more pleasure than that one, you could look at it as a way of, this is a helpful, meaningful job. I have observed people who don't have work and how they're not happy, and people have stupid, meaningless jobs, but they feel like they're going and they could helping people or doing something useful to somebody. Somehow they're happier. So I'm just assuming this is part of our brains. I don't feel like, this is the way we evolved. We are, and it's not because we're good people or bad people. It's not because the cosmos is making us do it. It's because our brains are just structured this way. So get over it and just like do the best you can with it. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Go on. So is that Lou coming in?
I was just going to say, and again, I mean, I think the deal with it, with the sunglasses coming down, and I think deal with it is a fairly. I mean, what else can you do? We're all dead soon enough. I mean, we'll all be joining the non-existent soon enough. And you do just have to kind of get on with life and accept it. But I do think, however, on the other hand, I think questioning beliefs, poking fun at authority, I think laughing at the blackness of life, because life isn't all fun and games. It is hard. It can be difficult. It can be. I think these are good things, and I think people like Elisha, not necessarily Elisha, but people like Elisha, do a service by poking at these things, and if only for a moment.
But let's include Elisha in there at least, surely. I mean, he is within earshot.
I was obviously joking, but again, I think if you can't live the lifestyle that Elisha and I would say, and I live, which is on the fringes, I think at least visiting with us and hearing the stories and having a little chuckle and then retreating back into whatever place you want, I think that it's a service. Do you not think, Elisha?
It's a service too. I think of it as play more than service. I think of it as, and people have asked me about this. People contact me periodically or ask me about, how sad and depressing this is, your worldview. And we haven't talked about how pleasurable it is, how freeing it is not to think about the moral structure and religion when you decide what you're going to do when you get up in the morning. I'm not thinking about doing good. I'm thinking about playing and doing things that give me pleasure. And whether that's helping somebody or giving a buck to a homeless guy or masturbating constantly or going to work, any of those things could just equally.
Not necessarily all at the same time, though.
Yeah, it's all at the same time. So
that's our next episode.
So I'm not going to fight with just the evolution that made me, gave me the pleasures I get, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to explain them, and it's freeing.
I was going to jump in and say, although on your video I was watching last night, there was I like the bit where you you go out to nature and you shoot wildlife because hey, fuck nature. And I must admit, I often say that fuck evolution, fuck biology, fuck the gold stars they give us. Stick it up their ass, and if I can take out some animals when I die, then so be it. I've made this joke before, but I'm gonna poison my body and feed me to some rare tigers, because I don't see why they should carry on living if I have to leave existence. But Elisha, I'll let you have that one for the comedy act. There you go.
Right. I'm gonna take elephants. I'm gonna take a couple of elephants down with me.
There you go.
Elephants are funnier than tigers. Let's be honest.
Right. Should we say thank you then to
and
Elisha
on that note,
for again, I think it's interesting having nihilists on the show. I think you're our second or third admitted nihilist, and it's interesting to see that where people agree, where people disagree, where people's priorities are. I mean, you're poking fun, another person is crying. I think we all have our own reactions. So thank you for joining us, Elisha.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for chatting with me.
Yes, thank you. Lovely to speak to you.
And good luck with the nihilism and keep it up. And hopefully we'll maybe chat to you again soon in the future.
Okay, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Indeed. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.